Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. As mentioned, our special guest is Jeff Schmitt. He's the Director of Research for the Center for Integrative Medicine at Wake Forest, founding member of numerous companies, including Targacept, where he led the development of simulation technology to make the process of drug discovery more efficient. Jeff has published over 100 peer-reviewed publications, patents, and abstracts. He's on the editorial advisory boards of 5 international journals, and he's with us today on This Week in America to talk about his role as the chairman of the Heart of the Healer. Jeff, welcome to This Week in America. A pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thanks so much, Rick. It's a true pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a lively conversation.
Well, there are so many interesting things to talk about on the program. And again, Jeff's website, by the way, is heartofthehealer.org. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on and get all the information. Let's start off very basic. What is Heart of the Healer Foundation?
Well, it's a decades-old foundation, and for most of its life, it has supported one of the largest and most coherent communities of South American folk healing and shamanic practice throughout the United States and Europe. Our community numbers in about 4,000 or 5,000 people in the community of practice. And we also support a leading, if not the leading, education and apprenticeship program in the shamanic healing arts called the Pachacute Mesa Tradition. And we also have a one-of-a-kind eco-spiritual retreat center in the southern Peruvian Amazon rainforest.
I know one thing you talk about is using ancient wisdom for the modern world. Does that pretty well basically sum up what you're doing? I mean, you're talking about, and we'll discuss it in the program, getting back to the earth, transformation, that type of thing. And you've got a scientific background. Is that what led you to studying this?
It certainly is, Rick, and it's a great bridge to speaking on the topic of why our mission is so important and why I personally believe that my career should be now spent focusing on this rather than in a laboratory or doing policy work. If you look across the board, I would say 90 to 95% of the conversation among pundits who are concerned with the future of humanity, future of the planet, most of the conversation revolves around the next technology, the next innovation. What is it from the perspective of science and its application that is going to solve all of our problems? This is often referred to as techno-fetishism, the belief that we're going to innovate our way out of the current tangled mess that humanity finds herself in. And, you know, as a technology and innovation junkie, I can't say that there's not a valuable and important place for technology and innovation, but I've come to believe through my own life and my own experiences that this needs to be balanced by remembrance, by a resetting, if you will, of who we see ourselves as individuals, as community members, and as species on a living planet where all things are interconnected. So the value proposition and the importance of our mission as a foundation and as a community is around helping people come back to the earth, come back to themselves in an authentic way that leads to healing of self, community, and planet. And one of the things that I've really deeply appreciated about our community and our work is that we are agnostic from the perspective of spiritual traditions. Our tools and techniques are actually part of our human heritage and can be applied usefully no matter what your work is, no matter what your faith is. It's very universal and very simple and very practical. That's the beauty.
Well, it's interesting as we look at all the problems in the world. Take the first 15, 20 minutes of a nightly newscast. Take the first page or two of the newspaper. So many of those problems, I guess when you really look at it, there's really no technological answer for the crisis we face.
That's absolutely right. As a person who loves systems thinking and has applied that in my scientific career, I think this is a great example of a systems-oriented issue. When you look at issues like climate destabilization, poverty, wealth inequity, all these problems that people with very, very good and powerful intention are addressing, oftentimes there's a underlying common theme among them that isn't being addressed. It's very much the same thing that we have seen in Western medicine that has in some ways hampered its effectiveness, is the drive towards addressing symptoms and not underlying systemic problems. Now, I have a great deal of sympathy for my friends and colleagues who are grappling with these problems, because the fact is, and this is what I've learned from my dear friend David McConville, head of the Buckminster Fuller Foundation, is that as a culture, we really don't train each other, particularly not our young people, how to deal with the classes of problems and challenges that are characteristic of a modern globalized world. And what we're saying is that the first place you have to look and the first place you have to go is within yourself and reestablish a connection between yourself and the living world. That's the place where you can be most effective from. And I've seen that in my own life and experience. I've experienced profound change within myself through these practices and through these work, and I'm committing myself to this foundation and this tradition because I believe that it's highly extensible and will lead to powerful, powerful transformation.
I would like to talk about your experiences, and I'll remind people they're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/This Week in America. Our guest on the program is Jeff Schmitt, chairperson for the Heart of the Healer. Let's go back to you. As I mentioned in the beginning, you have an extensive background in medicine and science and the arts and entrepreneurship. You've been on the cutting edge of a lot of technology that's used today. Yet, obviously, there was still something missing. Were you experiencing some emptiness, like this really isn't all there is, and I've got problems and technology's not answering them?
Well, thank you for your kind comments about my career. I certainly have been very interested and very engaged in science, and I have great faith in many aspects of the scientific community and the scientific process. There are true miracles that have resulted from that. I've always been a spiritual seeker. I'm actually from the perspective of zodiac, I'm actually a Gemini, so I've led two lives, one life in science and the other in the internal arts, the esoteric arts. For many, many years, was a devout practitioner of martial arts. Now, through a strange turn of events, I got introduced to, because I was seeking some healing work myself, I got introduced to these traditions. And one thing after another happened, as it usually does when you open your heart and are ready for transformation. I was introduced to one of the senior students of Oscar Miro Casado, the founder of the Heart of the Healer, and in basically a 5-year period, essentially was given. Well, of course, it was a lot of work and a lot of introspection and some suffering. I got my rear end kicked quite a few times, but essentially given a new life. I mean, I credit my healthy, happy life and my broadened perspective about the world to having walked as an apprentice through these traditions, and now I'm a educator and teacher and advocate. And that's essentially my experience. Now, why I'm so motivated is because I believe that right now is a particularly important time for bridge builders, those of us who have lived their lives in different widely accepted disciplines and gotten all those creds that you so kindly mentioned, gives me a platform to help create new ways of understanding why it's so important that we listen to and honor and preserve the life ways, the wisdom traditions, and the practices of those people that have lived on the earth in balance successfully. And, as Wade Davis says, we are with impunity wiping these fonts of wisdom and successful living and practice off the earth with impunity. A great example of that is that in the time that you and I, Rick, have been alive, half of the languages on the planet have disappeared. That's a potent and distressing metric about the rate in which we are wiping indigenous culture and hence all of the underlying wisdom off the face of the planet. Now, let me tell you a little story. I was very, very fortunate a few years ago to spend some time deep in the northern Amazon jungle with a tribe called the Sequoias. And I'll tell you, these people were the healthiest, happiest, and probably the wisest people that I've ever encountered in my entire life. Through the Western anthropological lens, we would probably characterize them as a primitive curiosity. But I had experiences on a daily basis that were so fundamentally jarring and so fundamentally rocked my worldview that I ended up in tears every day at the grace and the wisdom and the sensitivity with which these people interacted with the living world. They are truly in love with the living world around them, despite the fact that it's one of the most dangerous places you could possibly imagine living.
What were you able to bring back from that? Because you're coming back to an industrialized world, and if you start talking about the earth, it becomes a political situation where no, that's just liberals out trying to do something. What were you able to bring back and apply to your life and to people that you're dealing with on a daily basis?
Quite a lot, and I'll speak from a personal perspective. When I went down there, I was on my way to being a happy person, but I was still pushing up against a lot of things that I was not at peace with about who I am and my limitations. Most of us in the industrialized world, most of us overachievers, spend 80% of our time kind of bludgeoning our way through the world, right. And we're always pushing up against things that end up, making us think that we're not enough. We haven't gotten the long enough CV or this or that title, and so something's wrong. Well, I did very fortunate. I did a ceremony with two of the elders from the community, and the teaching that I got in that ceremony, it was a very intense and profound ceremony. One of the teachers actually met me in the dream world, and we had a conversation. In the real world, he didn't speak English. And we, in this ceremony, kind of met in the space that people usually dream in. And he was sitting there next to me. I actually have a TEDx talk on this. I can give you a link to that towards the end of our time together.
Yeah, we'll put that up on our website.
Yeah, and essentially, Rick, what he said was, listen, kid, your life's ambition, your dream of contributing in a substantive way to a positive human future is never going to work unless you're 100% happy. And furthermore, kid, let's be really clear. I'm not talking about you being happy with the myths and illusions that you build around your life story, the ways that you prop yourself up by writing all your creds on your curriculum vitae. No, you need to be happy in your total, raw, naked state, or you're never going to fully achieve and blossom into the powerful change maker that you dream. I mean, it was that simple, and I think that characterizes the powerful medicine of these old wisdom traditions, and indeed, it's reflected in Oscar's book. Oscar's book is a roadmap, in his words, a corn and potatoes growing roadmap to restoring a wholeness in one's life, creating happiness, and thus reflecting that out into the world. So
his book, by the way, is Lessons in Courage, and he'll be on in a couple of weeks to talk about that. We've got a couple minutes left in the program. If someone is listening and going, I have that emptiness, I keep looking to the future for answers, looking to technology for the answers. What is the first steps that somebody could take away from this and go, this really, I think, is going to help slow things down and put everything in perspective, get closer to the earth, and more importantly, possibly closer to other people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would recommend highly, because it's so informative and so incredibly entertaining, reading Oscar's book, Lessons in Courage. Pre-sales are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble right now, and it is truly a very intimate look at the life of a very extraordinary man who is not only a very accomplished shaman and healer priest, but also a Western trained transpersonal psychologist, and it provides an intimate and very practical way for you to think about how to address, through inner work and through engaging in authentic community, a path to a happy, healthy life. And there's 5 beautiful, simple themes: trusting soul, honoring spirit, opening heart, transforming mind, and healing body. So through the exercises that are in this book and your engagement in them, you will witness tremendous transformation. We also have in our community of practice all sorts of ways to get engaged and get involved and learn more about our tradition and our earth honoring ways and practices. I think you'll love it.
Jeff Schmitt has been our guest on This Week in America. He is chairperson for the Heart of the Healer. The website is very simple, heartofthehealer.org. The book that Jeff talked about is Lessons in Courage. We'll be talking about that in a couple of weeks in the program. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on to Jeff's website and get all the information, heartofthehealer.org. In about 30 seconds, I guess what you're saying is, once again, we maybe overcomplicate things. Things are fairly simple oftentimes, and instead of looking to the future to find answers, if we look at the past, they may be right there in front of us.
Indeed. Beautifully stated, Rick. And we look forward to each of the listeners whose heart was moved by this conversation to reach out to us. We're here. We have additional information both on our website and our YouTube site, which is YouTube/Heart of the Healer. And we look forward to meeting you. And Rick, thanks so much for having me on today. It was a great pleasure.
Jeff, it was our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And the website, once again, is heartofthehealer.org. You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.